Tonight, I take your place. 5 words whispered in Hulk Hogan's ear that ended a friendship and started wrestling's most explosive rivalry. WrestleMania V, 1989. Atlantic City. 2 best friends were about to become bitter enemies, and nobody in that arena knew why. Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City, New Jersey. April 2nd, 1989. Sunday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. The backstage area of one of wrestling's most luxurious venues hums with pre-show energy, but there's an undercurrent of tension that has nothing to do with normal match nerves. In less than 4 hours, 16,000 fans will witness what they believe is a friendly exhibition match between 2 of WWE's biggest stars. But the reality behind the curtain is far more personal, far more devastating, and far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Hulk Hogan sits alone in his private dressing room, a converted hotel suite that overlooks the Atlantic City boardwalk. At 35 years old, he remains the undisputed king of professional wrestling, but lately he's been feeling the pressure of younger, hungrier performers who want to take his place at the top of the industry. His blonde mustache is perfectly groomed. His tan is deep and even from months of training in the Florida sun, and his massive frame fills the leather chair where he's been sitting for the past 20 minutes, staring out at the ocean and thinking about his future in the wrestling business. The relationship between Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior has always been unique in the wrestling world. Unlike most performer relationships that are built on professional respect mixed with competitive jealousy, these 2 men developed a genuine friendship that transcended their on-screen personas. They trained together in the gym, spent time with each other's families, and shared the kind of personal conversations that most wrestlers keep to themselves in an industry built on carefully maintained facades. Ultimate Warrior, whose real name is James Bryan Hellwig, represents everything that Hulk both admires and fears about the new generation of wrestling performers. At 29 years old, he possesses an intensity and physical presence that seems to tap into something primal in wrestling audiences. His painted face, wild hair, and manic energy create a character that feels genuinely unpredictable, genuinely dangerous, in ways that go beyond traditional wrestling theatricality. When Ultimate Warrior speaks, even in casual conversation, there's an undercurrent of barely controlled chaos that makes people listen whether they want to or not. But over the past 6 months, Hulk has noticed changes in his friend that have made him increasingly uncomfortable. Warrior's casual conversations have taken on an edge of resentment, subtle comments about recognition, about opportunities, about the way the wrestling business rewards certain performers while overlooking others. Nothing direct, nothing that could be called an outright complaint, but enough to make Hulk wonder if the friendship he values so much is built on foundations that are less solid than he had believed. The tension began building 3 months ago during a routine training session at Vince McMahon's private gym in Stamford, Connecticut. Hulk and Warrior were working through their match choreography, discussing moves and timing with the casual professionalism that comes from years of experience. But when Warrior suggested a particular sequence that would showcase his strength advantage over Hulk, something in his tone suggested that the suggestion wasn't entirely about what would look good for the cameras. "You know, Hulk," Warrior had said, his voice carrying that intensity that made everything he said sound like a challenge. "The fans are getting tired of the same old hero routine. They want something more real, more intense. They want someone who doesn't need catchphrases and marketing gimmicks to get their attention." The comment hung in the air between them like a toxic cloud. Hulk tried to laugh it off, to treat it as the kind of good-natured ribbing that friends engage in, but something in Warrior's eyes suggested that humor wasn't the intention. This wasn't friendly competition. This was an assessment, a judgment about Hulk's value as a performer and his right to occupy the position he had held for years. From that day forward, their interactions took on a different quality. Warrior's compliments became backhanded, his suggestions became challenges, and his presence became a constant reminder that friendship in the wrestling business is often conditional on professional circumstances that can change without warning. The final straw came 2 weeks ago during a promotional appearance in New York City. Hulk and Warrior were signing autographs at a sports memorabilia store when a young fan, probably no more than 10 years old, approached Warrior's table with a Hulk Hogan action figure and asked if Warrior could sign it. The child's explanation was innocent enough. He wanted both of his favorite wrestlers' signatures on the same toy. But Warrior's response revealed everything that had been building beneath the surface of their relationship. Instead of signing the figure with the usual professional courtesy that such situations require, Warrior looked at the child and said, loudly enough for everyone in the store to hear, "Why do you want my signature on his toy? I'm the real Warrior here. He's just an actor playing a part." The comment was devastating in its public nature and its personal cruelty. Hulk felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger, but the presence of fans and media made any immediate response impossible. He had to sit there, maintaining his heroic persona, while his supposed friend systematically undermined him in front of the people whose respect and admiration made his career possible. That night, in the privacy of his hotel room, Hulk called Warrior's room and tried to address what had happened. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes and ended with Warrior hanging up after delivering a message that would haunt Hulk for the next 2 weeks. Maybe it's time people knew the truth about who the real champion is around here. Now, sitting in his dressing room overlooking the Atlantic City boardwalk, Hulk can't shake the feeling that tonight's match represents more than just another professional obligation. Something in Warrior's behavior over the past few days has suggested that this evening will be a turning point, not just in their friendship, but in their entire relationship with the wrestling business they both claim to love. A knock on the door interrupts Hulk's brooding. His assistant pokes her head into the room to let him know that Ultimate Warrior is asking to speak with him privately before the show begins. Under normal circumstances, this would be routine. Partners often meet before matches to review their choreography one final time. But given the tension that has been building between them, Hulk approaches this meeting with a sense of dread that he's never experienced before a wrestling match. Ultimate Warrior is waiting in the hallway outside Hulk's dressing room, but something about his appearance immediately sets off alarm bells in Hulk's mind. Warrior's usual manic energy has been replaced by an unsettling calm that makes him seem more dangerous, not less. His wild hair is pulled back from his painted face, and his eyes carry a focus that Hulk recognizes as the look of someone who has made a decision that can't be unmade. "We need to talk," Warrior says, his voice carrying none of its usual theatrical bombast. This is James Bryan Hellwig speaking, not the Ultimate Warrior character, and somehow that makes the situation feel infinitely more serious. They walk together down the corridor, away from the main backstage area where other performers and staff members might overhear their conversation. The hotel's backstage layout provides numerous alcoves and empty rooms where private conversations can take place, and Warrior leads them to a service corridor that connects the main backstage area to the loading docks. The corridor is dimly lit by fluorescent fixtures that cast harsh shadows on the concrete walls. The sound of their footsteps echoes in the confined space, and Hulk can hear the distant noise of fans entering the arena above them. In 3 hours, 16,000 people will be watching their every move, analyzing their performance, and cheering for the drama they create together. But right now, in this empty corridor, the only audience for their drama is each other. Warrior stops walking and turns to face Hulk directly. The height difference between them is minimal. Both men stand well over 6 feet tall, but Warrior's intensity makes him seem to loom larger than his physical dimensions would suggest. When he speaks, his voice carries a weight that makes every word feel like a physical blow. "Hulk," Warrior says, "I want you to know that what happens tonight isn't personal, it's business. But it's also inevitable." The words are delivered with such certainty that Hulk feels his stomach tighten with anxiety. This doesn't sound like a conversation about match choreography or promotional strategy. This sounds like a declaration of war. "What are you talking about, Warrior?" Hulk asks, though part of him already knows that he doesn't want to hear the answer. Warrior steps closer, close enough that Hulk can see the details of his face paint, close enough to smell the intensity that seems to radiate from his skin like heat from a fever. When he speaks again, his voice drops to barely above a whisper, but every word carries the force of absolute conviction. "Tonight, I take your place as the real champion. Not just the belt, not just the position. Your place, everything you've built, everything you represent, everything the fans think you are. Tonight, that becomes mine. And there's nothing you can do to stop it, because deep down, you know I deserve it more than you do." The words hit Hulk like a series of physical blows. This isn't just professional ambition or competitive jealousy. This is a complete repudiation of everything they've built together. Everything Hulk thought their friendship meant, everything he believed about loyalty and respect in the wrestling business. "Warrior," Hulk says, his voice shaking slightly, "we're supposed to be friends. We're supposed to be on the same side." But Warrior shakes his head with a finality that makes Hulk's heart sink. "Friendship is a luxury that champions can't afford. You taught me that, actually, even if you didn't realize it. I've watched you for 2 years, seen how you handle business, seen how you protect your position. Well, now I'm going to use those same techniques to take what should have been mine from the beginning." The betrayal is complete and devastating. Warrior hasn't just decided to end their friendship. He's decided to use that friendship as a weapon against Hulk, to turn everything Hulk taught him about the wrestling business into tools for his own advancement. For 30 seconds, the two men stand in that service corridor, staring at each other across a chasm that has opened so suddenly and so completely that neither of them seems quite sure how to process what has just happened. Hulk feels like he's looking at a stranger wearing his friend's face, someone who has calculated every aspect of their relationship and found ways to weaponize even their most personal moments together. The silence stretches between them, heavy with the weight of betrayal and broken trust. Hulk's mind races through memories of their friendship, late-night conversations about the wrestling business, training sessions where they pushed each other to be better, family dinners where their wives and children had grown close, moments of genuine laughter and camaraderie that had seemed to transcend the competitive nature of their profession. All of those memories now felt tainted, poisoned by the realization that Warrior had been calculating even during their most personal interactions. Had every piece of advice Hulk had offered been catalogued as future ammunition? Had every moment of vulnerability been stored away for later use as a weapon? The questions tormented him even as he stood there trying to process the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Warrior watches Hulk's face as these realizations play out, and there's something in his expression that might be regret. It's impossible to tell which. For a brief moment, his theatrical intensity wavers, and Hulk catches a glimpse of something that looks almost like the friend he thought he knew. But the moment passes quickly, replaced by the cold calculation that now seems to define their relationship. "You're wondering if any of it was real," Warrior says, his voice softer now, but no less devastating. "The friendship, the conversations, the trust, the answer is that it was all real, Hulk. That's what makes this so perfect. I learned from the best, and now I'm going to use everything you taught me to surpass you." The words are delivered with such clinical precision that they feel like surgical cuts, each one designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. Warrior isn't just ending their friendship, he's performing a vivisection of it, dissecting every element to show how it can be repurposed for his own advancement. Finally, Warrior steps back, and when he speaks again, his voice has returned to its usual theatrical intensity. But now Hulk understands that the theatricality isn't performance. It's who Warrior really is underneath everything else. A man who has turned his entire existence into a carefully constructed character designed to achieve maximum impact in every interaction. "See you out there, champion," Warrior says, emphasizing the last word in a way that makes it sound like a temporary title that he's already planning to claim. Then he turns and walks back toward the main backstage area, leaving Hulk alone in the service corridor with the crushing realization that he has just lost not only a friend, but also the comfortable certainty he once had about his place in the wrestling world. That night, in front of 16,000 screaming fans at Trump Plaza, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan put on a match that wrestling historians would later call one of the most emotionally complex performances of the 1980s. To the audience, it looked like two friends engaged in friendly competition, testing each other's limits while maintaining mutual respect. But for those who knew what had transpired in that service corridor, every move carried additional weight. Every near fall represented a real attempt to prove superiority. Every moment of apparent cooperation masked genuine psychological warfare between two men who had discovered that their friendship was built on foundations that couldn't survive professional ambition. Hulk won the match that night, but the victory felt hollow in ways that had nothing to do with the scripted nature of professional wrestling. He had retained his championship and his position at the top of WWE, but he had lost something more valuable: the belief that personal relationships in the wrestling business could transcend the competitive pressures that drove everyone in the industry. Years later, both men would have successful careers and championships that validated their talents. But neither would recapture the brotherhood destroyed in that service corridor beneath Trump Plaza on a Sunday afternoon in April 1989. The whispered words, "Tonight, I take your place," became a turning point not just in their relationship, but in Hulk's understanding of how friendship and business, where success is measured in championships, crowd reactions, and the ability to maintain relevance in an industry that is always looking for the next big star. For Hulk Hogan, that conversation represented the end of his innocence about the wrestling business and the beginning of a more cautious, more calculating approach to personal relationships that would define the rest of his career. He had learned that even genuine friendship couldn't survive the pressures of an industry where today's partner inevitably becomes tomorrow's competition. The ultimate irony was that Warrior's prediction proved correct. He did establish himself as a main event performer with his own championship reign, but the cost was the destruction of a friendship that had seemed unbreakable. For Hulk, that conversation marked the end of his innocence about wrestling and the beginning of a more cautious approach to relationships that would define his career.